Hi, I'm Peter Fisk, and I'm delighted to be here today at the Conrad Convention 2020. And I'm going to be talking about accelerating our digital future. You know, we live in a time of incredible change, and the biggest question every executive should be asking themselves is, how do you see the future for your business? You know, this change is happening at enormous speed. We're probably going to see more change in the next 10 years than in the last 250 years, which is just incredible when you think about it. You know, from steam engines, how did that transform industry? Think about telegraph and telephones. How did that transform the way we'd connect to each other in real time? Think about aeroplanes bringing global cultures together. Think about the man on the moon changing our dreams, and then the digital tsunami of the last 30 years to the point where we can't live without that smartphone in your hand right now. And then I say more change in the next 10 years than all of that. And you think, well, what are you going to do during that time? How are you going to change, and how are you going to seize the opportunities of that change? You know, the best way to do that is to start from the future backwards. So the megatrends, 5 big megatrends, are a great way of thinking about what are the big waves which you can ride into the future and be part of the emerging opportunities. There's 5 big megatrends. The first one is the aging world. You know, 40% of the world will be over 60 very soon, and most of them will actually be in Asia. How does that change needs, the way in which we support people, pensions and healthcare? Booming Asia, the new middle class is really the big phenomenon in Asia. That's where the new growth is for every type of company. Cognitive technologies, technologies which can think, technologies which are smart because they have data and artificial intelligence. Dense living, people crowded into incredible mega cities across the world, and environmental challenges and social challenges all around us, where we need to think in a different business model by which we can be successful for business and the global context in which we live and work. You know, we're part now of what's called the 4th industrial revolution. And what's different about that is that it brings technologies together. It's connected technologies. So think about how digital platforms connect with IoT, connect, for example, with 3D printing, connect with blockchain and other kinds of great technologies, but also how they connect with humanity at the same time. So people, and how people can be smarter and better because they have technologies to support them and at their disposal. Jim Snaber, he's the chairman of Siemens and Maersk. He says, we live in a time which is accelerating so fast, it's not enough to know what's going to happen next. What you should be focused on is what happens after what happens next. And that's what every leadership team should be thinking about. So how can we use technology to solve the bigger problems, he says, and how can we combine technology and humanity to actually enrich our lives in new and better ways? But at the same time, we live in a world of deep crisis. COVID-19 has swept across the world. And the biggest impact of all of COVID-19 is that it's accelerated the change which I've just been talking about. You know, so let's, from a business point of view, think about some of the winners during that time. You know, obviously companies like Amazon, in terms of $400 billion of market capitalization growth, you know, huge kind of transformation in terms of digital lifestyles, the way in which we work, the way in which we learn, the way in which we shop, and so on. Eric Yuan, the guy who created Zoom just 18 months ago, he used to use WebEx. He wanted to create something which is far more intuitive and easy for people to use. He created Zoom, and his time suddenly came as the pandemic struck. He was quickly $30 billion richer. Or even Tesla, you know, the most valuable car company in the world. Really, the secret of Tesla is it's not just a car company, it's an energy company, accelerating the transition to clean energy. That's its mission statement. Or PayPal is all about peer-to-peer payments with its new service called Vento. Or Peloton, in terms of people at home working out, but being part of a digital community at the same time so that they can do things together and get motivated. And then Disney Plus, an example of a streaming service which achieved what Netflix took to achieve in 7 years in only 3 months. Incredible. Of course, there's losers too in any kind of shakeup. WeWork found that its business model truly was defunct. Every airline in the world, every hospitality company is truly struggling to survive. Live Nation has no hope right at the moment. And some traditional brands, great iconic brands like Hertz, found that they weren't so great because they haven't moved on. They hadn't adapted to a changing world. Even cosmetics found that their sales plummeted, partly because we were wearing face masks and didn't need our beauty. And then oil companies too found that the impact of less driving, less aircraft meant that their fortunes were less good. So in any kind of shake-up moment, a crisis, a downturn, there's lots of turbulence. 57% of companies are actually created during a downturn. So now is the time when companies are innovating. Now is the time when new companies are developing. Now is the time to actually double down in terms of thinking, how can you shift to new ways of working and new ways of engaging customers and reaching perhaps new markets with new ways of supporting them. One example of a great company just opened in Tokyo is Sushi Singularity. This is a company where you don't just turn up with a reservation when it's allowed, but you actually have to book 5 days in advance and you do a DNA test before you go. You spit into a tube, you send your DNA to them, they will analyze your body. They'll look at it in terms of your eating habits, what's good and what's bad for you. And then they will design with 3D printing technology in a natural way, they will design the perfect sushi for you, which will taste, but also be incredibly good for you. So personalization enabled by a mixture of these new technologies, digital, but also physical at the same time. Anne Wojcicki, she was an investment banker. She was working on Wall Street. She read a report. She was reading about healthcare. And it said, the future of healthcare is data. And she said, well, what does that mean? I thought it was hospitals and caring for people and medicines. But then she looked further. Data in terms of understanding people's DNA. How could that transform into personalized medicines? How can it transform into preventative healthcare so that you don't get sick, that you can actually stay healthier and live longer? She set up a company called 23andMe. And just this year, in January 2020, she started producing with GSK personalized medicines for the first time on a mass basis. So we have to think in different ways about this changing world. And I'm a big fan of science. My background's in science. And so Albert Einstein is one of my heroes. But actually, I also love art. So Pablo Picasso is a great hero too. And in some ways, we need to combine the brains of Einstein, who was largely about logic, the left brain, and Picasso was largely about intuition and improvisation, which is more about the right brain in very simple terms. But actually, we all have a left brain and a right brain. And our challenge is to combine the two sides together. But the left side tends to be about data. The left side tends to be about logic. The left side tends to be about mechanical things. The left side tends to be more masculine. The right side tends to be more human. The right side tends to be more intuitive. The right side tends to see a bigger picture. The right side tends to be more feminine. What we need to do with our solutions for business today is to think about how can we do both. Yes, we need logic and analysis and data and all that kind of stuff, but we need a bit of magic at the same time. We need something which really engages people, excites people, which is fun, which is inspiring and human. So when you're thinking about your business, when you're thinking about selling your products, think about Einstein and Picasso and how can you fuse the two sides of the brain together. And in many ways, we see that right now, like those companies which are winning in this time of accelerated change. In a sense, they're liquid businesses. Liquid in the sense that they're half digital and half physical. So how do we bring human and technology companies together? And you can see that in every type of sector. In healthcare, we see digital kind of connections with our doctor, but then referred to a clinic, for example. In work, we see people working remotely, but actually they're more collaborative than ever before. In retail, we see click and collect, for example, as an emerging trend. So you're buying online, but then you're collecting physically, and so on and so on. So this fusion, if you like, of physical and digital, human and technology, data and rigor and analysis, but also fun and inspiration, that's something which really is the secret of our changing world. So some examples of how is that kind of really shaping up in the world of retail. Well, Alibaba, the Chinese company, it pioneered a new concept called new retail. And it said omni-channel is not the future. We need to go beyond that. It's really about how digital technologies, for example, the mobile phone, how can that help your store experience when you're walking around the aisles of a store? How can it help you to be more informed? How can it help you to be more personalized in terms of the offers, the navigation, or understanding the ingredients of what you're buying? But equally, in a digital world, how can you be more physical? So, for example, if you need to talk to somebody on a website, you can have a human interaction at the same time. So the combination of the two they call new retail, and it's a fantastic kind of concept which is propelling them and all of their customers forwards. Another example is smart services, smart in the sense of intelligent, personalized, understanding you as an individual. The most successful healthcare company right now is Ping An's Good Doctor. In China, it has over 300 million people who are now subscribing to it as its primary source of healthcare. If you feel unwell, you go to their website, and with artificial intelligence, they will diagnose your symptoms. If you do need to talk to a doctor, you can talk by smartphone. If you do need to get a prescription and medicines, you can get one and it'll be delivered to your home by motorbike or from a local vending machine. If you do need to go to a clinic or a hospital, they have over 10,000 partners where you can get a real physical experience beyond the virtual. So really combining together the physical and the digital in a smart or an intelligent way. The other one is social, really connecting people, building on that idea of social media for communication to social media as a form of commerce. Instagram stores have been incredibly successful during the last 9 months. So using the power of people's connectivity and their influence and their trust in each other, and then saying, how can we shop? And how can we refer other people to buy things, the things which we love, and using that platform of the mobile phone and then the social media within it to connect people together and to connect them with the world of the best, the most relevant retailers for them. Or go further and think about gamified experiences. There's a fantastic Chinese company now worth over $200 billion called Pinduoduo. And Pinduoduo is all about gamification, where you bring people together, you entice them in terms of playing games, and then they work together, they scan around, they look for interesting things which they want to buy. If they want to buy something, they can get a much better price if they buy it together. And so this creates a collective behavior. Maybe even they bring extra people into their groups, and so you make new friends and buy things together. And then gradually, understand more and more about these people. You keep them connected with the games, and you actually build an ongoing form of commerce and community at the same time. Incredibly successful, and the fastest growing technology company in the world right now is Pinduoduo. Or you have community brands, and one of my favorites for this is Rapha, the cycling brand. Rapha is all about making very expensive cycling clothing. But the real passion of Rapha is people and their love of cycling itself. So Rapha is actually called a cycle club, so not a store. And it's really connecting people together, consumer to consumer, to do what they love, to share their emotions, to share their passions. And then Rapha is supporting them to do that better. And the brand and the clothing which comes with it, and the other kinds of services like selling bikes or repairing bikes or events and navigation, all of that is about supporting the community to do what they love and to do it better. So 5 different examples of how retailers are really stepping up in this digital world, this accelerating digital world, to do things differently, better, and more excitingly as well. So what will you do next? Well, there's two people who really give me inspiration. One of them is a guy, Zhang Rumin. He's the CEO of Haier, the Chinese, but actually the world's largest white goods company, making more refrigerators and washing machines than anybody else. And I met him last year when I was writing my book. And he said to me, Peter, in 5 years' time, we won't actually be making any money from our refrigerators or washing machines. We'll be giving them away free. And I said, well, that's fascinating. How are you going to make money? And he said, well, we're actually going to be in the services business by then. We'll be actually giving away the washing machines, the refrigerators, and then we'll actually be providing the services for people to use them. So maybe it's providing the laundry powder, but actually, if you're dealing with people's clothes, maybe you're actually advising them in terms of new fashions, and you're working with the brands and the retailers to actually manage their entire wardrobe. So if it's refrigerators, you're not just kind of replenishing their fridge using smart sensors, but actually you're actually giving them help in terms of better nutrition or being able to cook better meals. Suddenly, I really understood what he was talking about. He was adding value. He was becoming more essential to people's lives. And he was harnessing the power of these digital technologies to do things in incredible ways and becoming much more important than just a washing machine or a refrigerator supplier. The other person is Emily Weiss. She created Glossier, the fastest growing beauty company in the world. It's a consumer to consumer business, C2C. And it's really built on consumers who have a passion for beauty. It started with a blog. And actually all those people who were sharing their beauty tips together said, well, why don't we actually create our own brand? They called it Glossier. They co-create their own cosmetics and they co-influence each other in terms of what are the best things to buy and how to use those products to be to the best effect. And what Emily Weiss says is that actually, digital technologies are the things which truly can transform every business and transform everybody's lives. What we shouldn't be worried about is making the big shift. And now is the time more than ever before. The moment when people are changing attitudes, changing behaviors, now is the time when digital companies and digital behaviors truly are at the center of people's lives. And now is the time when innovators really should be driving their innovations and driving new growth. So be bold, be brave, and be brilliant. And thank you so much for inviting me to the Conrad Convention 2020. Thank you and goodbye.